Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good morning, Rush Nation. How we doing? It's another beautiful day for fantasy football. Scott Fishbowl drafts now heading into day 4 of a slow draft. Some live drafts already happened, some happening this week. JTT just 3 days away. Warrior Bowl just 4 days away. There's a lot going on at the moment, and there's lots of things to dive into. So I guess what I'll do with the Scottish Bowl, look, you've had my thoughts on where the RB run, the QB runs are, the wide receiver runs. So we've looked through the data. Might be back tomorrow and do some sort of later round picks. I feel like we've covered off what the first 8-9 rounds are going to be like, and that's where most people will get to by today or tomorrow. Some will be a bit slower, some will be a bit ahead, but ultimately that's kind of where you're going to be. So I feel like we've covered this in depth this week, except for potentially the punt returners and kick returners. I think this is a really important topic. So one of the things that I think is being severely underestimated in this draft, and this ties in nicely with the JTT Cup as well, because they've got significant return yards to the same point, is the actual essence of the kick return. So for those of you that are probably, most of you are probably aware, but the kick return rules have changed. And the idea is they created new kickoff rules to enable for more people to actually return kicks. There's a safety issue, so you find that most teams tend to just let the ball go into the end zone, and then they just take their starting point at the 20-yard line, and that's kind of where they are with the kickoff return or the kickoff. So these kickoff rules are going to change that significantly. So I'm going to give you some data. So kickoff returns, okay? The Rams and the Colts only returned 9 kicks last year. The Chiefs 12, the Giants 13, the Browns 11. So the actual average was under 20 kicks. And you think how many kicks there are in a game every time. There's a kickoff to each team each half, and then you've got each time there's a touchdown or a score. So you think there's multiple scores per game. There's multiple. You've got at least one kickoff a game, and yet some teams didn't even return on average 1 kick a game, and the average was about 1 kick a game. So there's a fundamental shift in the amount of opportunity here. So if you're basing your kickoff metrics or your returning metrics on last year's data, it's kind of a bit loose. Last year, the team that led the league in return yards was the Packers with 783. They returned 31 kicks. The Jaguars 688, the Seahawks 680. But on average, you were looking at somewhere in about the 340 range was sort of the average return yards on a season. If you think that the average kick return is going to be at least 20, 30 yards, it's not many. And that's kind of the point. These rules have come from the XFL, and also the USFL used them. So when the XFL brought these in, and that's where this got most of the traction, and that's why these are now in play for the NFL. They saw a 97% return rate. So 97% return rate, those 3% would probably be ones that were just punted. I didn't watch every game, so I'm speculating where the kick went straight through the back of the end zone. And we've seen a few of those. And that can happen. And so I don't necessarily think that it's going to reach 97%, because I think teams with long kickers, I think like Jake Kamada does the kickoff for the Buccaneers in particular, he can blow it out of the end zone. So ultimately, and especially in domes, with that extra distance, I think you won't see a 97% return. So anyone telling you like it's going to go and you're going to see 97% returns, I don't think that's going to happen either. But we are going to see a significant increase. You're going to see at least treble, quadruple. You could see as many as like 8x times the amount of kickoffs. And that's a speculation and some rough analysis that I've done on that. So the kick return rate last year was just 22%, just for context of that. Now, if it went to the 97%, it would be around 2,600 returns. So I don't think you're going to see that. I'm nigh on confident you're not going to see that. But I think what you're going to do is you're probably going to see somewhere in the region of a 50 to 70% return rate. So if we work on this, sort of, let's take the middle of that and go 3 times what we're seeing now. If there was 587 kickoff returns, you're looking at 1,500 kickoff returns. And therefore, if you're seeing that, you're seeing on average about 3 per team per game. That's maybe just a bit under that. Maybe sort of like 2.5 to 3 is kind of where that feels pretty good per game. You're going to see that elevated into those numbers where you're going to see those numbers go from like 200, 300 up to 700, 800. And that's kind of where I see this going. That's the range I'd put that in. So when you're sitting there and evaluating kick returners, they're being undervalued because they're using last year's historical data. And so players like Shaheed, players like Tajay Spears are players that are significantly undervalued in drafts because people don't understand that the rules have changed and what that looks like. So with all that said and done, I'm going to give you some names of who I think are going to be the potential kick returners to look at on each team. And now I'm not advocating one way or the other, saying that you absolutely must draft all of these guys. But I do think when you get into the later rounds of Scottish Bowl, JTT Cup drafts, you should absolutely look at adding some of these names as your last round flyers, late round flyers, because I don't think many people are going to be. So for the Arizona Cardinals, I'm looking at someone like DJ Dallas. For the Falcons, my best analysis is it's going to be Ray McLeod, although Avery Williams could potentially convolute that. For the Ravens, I think you're going to see Justice Hill. I think that would be the guy I would take the punt on. Khalil Shakir, I think, is still going to have a significant role in the kick return business for Buffalo, and therefore he's the receiver I want on the Buffalo Bills because I think he's going to be on parity with Coleman and Samuel or close to it. But I then think he's going to eclipse them in this scoring format because of the kick return yards. So I think you're going to see that there. With the Panthers, Raheem Blackshear is the guy I'd be looking at. He had on average 26.9 yards per kick. So again, when you're factoring in the scoring, that is almost sort of, if he gets those 3, if he gets 5 a game, it's 12 points. It's a flex option, right, in Scott Fishbowl format and other formats. So keep an eye on that one. For the Bears, Velas Jones is the guy I'd be looking at. Again, similar return numbers to Blackshear, if not slightly better. The Bengals is a tricky one. I think you could see Chase Brown. I think you could see Trayvon Williams. I would lean towards Trayvon Williams. That's the kind of name I think is going to happen. This is the ultimate steal in your Scott Fishbowl and JTT drafts, and I'd be drafting him somewhere in the region of. This came up in the fours chat as well today. I think you can easily get him in the 16th round. I'd advocate taking him maybe even in the 15th round. Is Nyheim Hines. He's on the Cleveland Browns. They've got a decent offense. They can score points. He is arguably the best kick returner in the NFL. So I would be looking to have him. He averaged nearly 30 yards a kick return. So I'm definitely having Nyheim Hines as a target in rounds. For Dallas, I think it's going to be Kevontae Turpin. Again, he averaged nearly 30 yards, so he's going to really take off on these new rules. For Denver, Marvin Mims, and again, that's why he ranks so significantly highly on my rankings than other players. I talked about him the other day as that option for Denver. The Lions is really difficult. If I had to take a punt, and it would be, and that's a pun absolutely intended, I would go with Vaki. I think Sony Vaki is the guy I would probably go for, but it is tricky. I don't really have a sense on where that job is going to go. For the Packers, it's going to be Keyshawn Nixon. He was an All-Pro last year, and I think even the season before that. So I definitely think he's the guy. For the Texans, I'd be taking Damian Pierce. I think he popped one for like over 90 yards last year. So again, he's a really good bet to have on your kick return. So again, late round running back option as well. I don't think he gets loads of rushing touches, but he's there. The Colts is really interesting here because I think they could go Josh Downs. Josh Downs is the guy I can lean towards. But they did draft a really interesting rookie, Anthony Gould. So Anthony Gould is a player that could earn this role. So look between those two guys. The Jaguars, I think it's Devin Duvernay, is where I'd likely see him be on there. He was signed as a free agent this offseason. He's not gone really to play wide receiver, so I imagine he's gone to play special teams. That's kind of where I see that role going, is with Devin Duvernay. The Chiefs have Kadarius Toney. I can't see him being used in any other way, so that's how I would see that. The Raiders have a really interesting one. I actually don't know. If I had to plump, I'd go with Trey Tucker, but I don't have any real confidence on that one. The Chargers, I think it would be Darius Davis. I think he's definitely the guy I would expect to be returning kicks there. For the Rams, Boston Scott. I mean, he's sort of done this for years with the Eagles, so it makes sense now that he would be doing that role. With the Dolphins, I definitely think it will be Braxton Berrios, but don't be surprised if you see a couple of the speedsters on that roster do that. Again, another player who is severely underranked in Scott Fish Bowl, Ty Chandler. I think he's going to get carries with the ball, but then I also think he's going to be a kick returner, so he's someone you should be targeting around about that sort of 13th, 14th round piece there for him. The Patriots, I think it will be Jalen Reagor. He did return really large numbers last year, did have a large kickoff return. The Saints, I can't see it past Rashid Shaheed, which is why I took him so early. The Giants, I think it will be Tyron Tracy is where I imagine that to be. So again, you've got that running back option who could gain some touches, especially if there's some injuries. And then on top of that, getting some kick return roles as well. The Jets, this is really tricky. I imagine it's going to be Xavier Gipson. He's the guy I would imagine it will be. The Eagles, Isaiah Rodgers. So he's interesting because he's a corner. But I do think he's in the mix there to potentially be the kick returner there. The Steelers, I think it will be Cordero Patterson, and we'll explain why he was signed there. The 49ers, I think it'll be Jordan Mason. The Seahawks, I think it'll be Eskridge. The Buccaneers, I think will be Bucky Irving. That's the guy I would expect to get that, and I think he's going to be a bit of an interesting weapon as well. So he's a guy I've got an eye on late in drafts as well. The Titans, Tajay Spears, which is why I just took him at the 9-9 in the 9-9. Couldn't help myself in the Scott Fish Bowl, because I think he's gonna compete with touches. I think he'd probably usurp Pollard, and then you got the kick returning on the side as well. I think he could be a real gem there in that range. The Commanders are genuinely stuck. I am genuinely stuck. If I had to throw a name out there, I imagine it would be Rodriguez Jr. But if I'm honest with you, that without seeing camp, I don't know. That's a really tricky situation there. But that gives you an idea where I am with some of the kick return numbers and kind of where I'm at with those players. So it gives you a nice idea there in terms of what I'm thinking. Right. So a couple of late round picks in the JTT Cup now. I'm going to do this by position, just some players to keep an eye on that I think could be really good sort of outbreaks based on the scoring. I think potentially you're looking at any time you can get a quarterback late. So Bryce Young, Derek Carr, really unfavored are players I would have here. If I'm looking at late running backs, I've already talked about Tyrone Tracy. I think he's going to be very, very late. Expect him to be somewhere in sort of the running back 60 range if I look at other best ball equivalent drafts. I'll also be keeping an eye on Ray Davis and Khalil Herbert. I think they're guys I'd definitely be keeping an eye on, or Roshan Johnson, whoever, which lane you want to go on there. But I also wouldn't rule out Braylon Allen. I think he's going to be so cheap that if I'm looking at players in the last 5 rounds, I think he's still going to be there, and I could take a punt on him, absolutely. If I'm looking at wide receivers, definitely Marvin Mims is the one that stands out. He's got to be someone that you've got to take in the opening 15 rounds for sure. But if I'm looking at sort of the more traditional receivers, Michael Wilson, for me, we talked about him on the show with Jim Coventry a couple of weeks ago. I think he's someone who's going to be a lot better now he's fully healthy. I also think that Demarcus Robinson is criminally undervalued. Zay Jones, who seems to get fantasy points anywhere he goes. So again, is another player I think is criminally undervalued and continues to be. And don't sleep on DJ Chark. You know, they've signed him. He's shown the talent previously. Injuries have got in the way. There isn't really a consensus one on that roster. So I think there's a good route for DJ Chark to get up and really be a disruptor here. Tight end's a bit of a wasteland, I think, when you get late down. Cade Otton for tight end targets, potentially Juwan Johnson. I know he's not 100% fit, but I'd be taking a gamble and hope he gets fit by October. Isaiah Likely in the hopes, not the hopes, but in the thought that maybe Mark Andrews gets injured yet again. And then I really like the idea of Dawson Knox. I'm just not sold that Kincaid dominates that role. So again, someone I think you could get in the box and get some points late. There's some late round players who I'd be keeping an eye on. Not to mention any and all of those kick returners that I just talked about. All of those are in play in the JTT Cup and also the Scott Fish Bowl. So there's some guys, especially in best ball, those guys I just mentioned on top of the kick returners in JTT Cup are guys you want to be looking out for and really paying attention to. So, yeah, zero in on those guys. Clip this, watch this, listen to this as much as you like. This is definitely going to be a good piece of information for you. The last one I want to get into is that the Warrior Bowl starts on Monday. And so as a result of that starting on Monday, I'm really keen to just kickstart my thoughts on that. A lot of people are in this. And so, you know, for me, I just want to make sure that we're really doing the due diligence here. And the one thing I kind of have noticed already on this is the quarterback scoring. So in particular, the quarterback scoring on Sleeper and the projections on Sleeper are just absolutely garbage. I think that they're probably missing key data. The completion data has probably not been factored in, as well as also the sack data. In fact, I know the sack data is not in there, and that brings the scores down quite significantly. So when you're sitting there and you're looking at the scoring for the Warrior Bowl, I'm just going to pull this up here for those of you that haven't actually dug into the scoring yet. And if you haven't, I completely understand. There's a lot of drafts going on, especially if you're in all of them. But to give you an idea on the scoring, I'm just pulling it up here. So it's the traditional 4-point touchdown, a 1 point for 25 yards passing, but they have a quarter of a point for 25 yards, a quarter of a point per first down. -4 for interceptions, -2 for pick sixes. A pick six is effectively wipe out more than a touchdown scored. Passes completed 0.25. Passes incomplete 0.5, and then the QB sack numbers, and that's one I don't think Sleeper is playing with here. So if you go in and look at, say, the projections to the Warrior Bowl and then projections to what you see on Sleeper versus my sheet here, there's a massive variance. I'm just skeptical, and I think the edge that you're going to get is, and I'm just doing quarterbacks today, I'll look at the other positions tomorrow, there's an edge here in that if you understand the true value of the scoring, you're going to make out okay, because this massively differs how I'm going to play it versus the scoring in Sleeper. Now, I always know the Sleeper scoring is a bit wonky because it doesn't include all the stats in the projection, and therefore I'm more cautious on quarterback, and others are going to be really bullish. And so with that in mind, similar to JTT Cup, we've got a lot of players from England, Greg and Foley. They do an amazing job. running the Warrior Bowl. I want to shout them out. They're good friends of mine. They sort of got me in on the ground floor really early with the Warrior Bowl. I was the runner-up in the first inaugural season to the Warrior Bowl. If you didn't know that, I tend to tell a lot of people that. Yes, it's not winning, but it's pretty close. I was winning in the late third quarter of Monday Night Football. So, but Stephon Diggs killed me. That's a tangent. So, look, in terms of they're phenomenal guys, they're raising near enough £20,000 every single year for charity, which is just a phenomenal effort. And so, you know, for me, first of all, make sure you're playing in the Warrior Bowl. It's a fun tournament. It's a great format. The guys are absolutely superb. Foley puts out some of the best videos you'll see on the internet. So yeah, phenomenal guys. In terms of the points here, this is my quarterback projection scoring. I have factored in each and every single one of the components alongside my projections to come out with these projected scores. So I do have Josh Allen is a clear QB1. Lamar Jackson is a clear QB2. Jalen Hurts is a clear QB3. QB4 and 5 is Anthony Richardson and Patrick Mahomes. You could really split them however you like. I've gone with the upside of Richardson, but I could understand the safety of Mahomes. And then CJ Stroud is the clear QB6. And then the scoring here tends to go flat. Prescott, Burrow, Murray. And look, the people are naturally assuming that the rushing quarterbacks are going to give you a significant advantage. But actually, outside of those opening three, and Richardson, they kind of don't. Let's take into particular Jaden Daniels. Is a rushing quarterback. He's a player that is going to be really attractive to people that haven't got into the scoring. But he's a rookie behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. So he's going to get sacked a lot. And that's a -1 every time he gets sacked. He's going to throw a lot of interceptions. That's -4 every time he throws one. He's going to throw some pick sixes. That's another -2 every time he does that. And he's not going to throw as many first downs because he's not as seasoned. So Jaden Daniels takes a massive hit in this scoring format for me. So a lot of people will look at the rushing because it's points for rushing attempts. And people will sit there and go, oh, okay, I'm going to jump in on Jaden Daniels. He's a rushing quarterback. I have him in my bottom 10. So not all rushing quarterbacks here make sense. So, you know, the scoring here evens out. There's arguably a whole tier here of 5 guys. Prescott, Burrow, Murray, Purdy, and Goff, and then not just the burgers. But they're separated by less than 1 point per game. So you could sit there and say, okay, I'm comfortable taking a QB in that tier. If they go, that's okay. There's another tier of 4 guys. Watson, Tua, Love, Lawrence. And then, okay, then you got Herbert, Wilson. And then it starts to get a bit nasty. Again, Danny Jones, another Russian quarterback. Not the best passer, and he gets hit with these numbers as a result. And then you get your sort of steady eddies in this range here as your QB2s. Now, you could sit here and take a punt on Daniels as your QB2, but I wouldn't reach for him. You know, these numbers are hard to project because he's a rookie. We don't have a lot to go on. But he is behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, and I'm worried about the sack numbers. Plus, he's a rookie to get used to the position. So this is why this scoring is so wildly different to what you're going to see on Sleeper. So the only way you're going to get these projections is I'll do some of these public, but I won't include absolutely every position public. And the reason why is, you know, we have some amazing Patreons who signed up to our channel who pay money every single month. And it's not a lot of money. It's, you know, anywhere from sort of £3 a month onwards to subscribe, and they get access to these sheets that I customly build for them. So the same with the Scott Fish Bowl sheets. I did them exclusively for them. They support this podcast in such a way that they allow us to do these things like these shows and pull resources together and buy subscriptions that allow us to get the best data to actually start looking at some of these numbers. So ultimately, you know, for me, the reward is for them. Now, if you're enjoying the shows I'm putting together and this content, you can also subscribe as a Patreon. And if you subscribe as a Patreon, you'll get access to these exclusive Patreon podcasts, etc. But I get it. There's a lot of fantasy football resources out there. I'm not forcing anybody to subscribe. But if you want these custom sheets, I do a custom sheet for all the charity leagues. I also do a custom sheet where they've got access to my projections, and it updates. They can update into their home league scoring, and there's a lot of factors in there that will adjust and work for that. So there's a lot of analysis and data that they get access to, and a lot of other sort of thoughts and purviews of mine. Plus, they get access to my brain on WhatsApp whenever they choose. So there's a good reason to subscribe to the Patreon. I hope you do. Again, you can subscribe for a very, very small amount, not even a cup of coffee a month. And if you subscribe to certain tiers, we actually, send you some merch as well. So it kind of pays for itself. So that's why I'm not putting all of this public. But again, it doesn't cost a lot to subscribe. So you can subscribe for a few months, get access to this, and then leave me in December, January if you so wish. I do pause the Patreon, by the way, between January and April. So, this is not loads of content that goes out. So we don't charge them. So you could get basically 8 months for the price of 5 now and be good. But that's it on the Patreon. That's it for my thoughts on the Warrior Bowl scoring and my rough thoughts on the projection. So I will scroll through these so people can screenshot these. And I will tomorrow, when I talk through the Warrior Bowl scoring in a bit more detail, I will put a public available sheet where I will put some of this data out there. So you will get to see access to this tomorrow. I will put the quarterbacks in there because I do think that if you've taken the time to listen to me and you've got access to this, you should be able to get. I want to give players who support this channel, even just by watching and listening to me and giving me their time, a significant advantage. And for me, quarterback is the most significant advantageous position because I think a lot of people are going to reach early and you can scoop the value elsewhere. And you're going to see that when I do the rest of the scoring sheet. So I'm happy to give the quarterback scoring rankings away for free, and I'll do some of the other projections, but I will be keeping the rest of it for the Patreons, and join the group. They're a phenomenal group, and we have great fantasy football discussions. So as you can see here, you've got the scoring here for how I project all the starting quarterbacks, and you can see I've got Las Vegas as a bit of a tie. I've hedged my bet there a little bit, but the big shocking ones here are someone like Daniels at QB 24. He's probably the biggest shock on here to people. I think the rest of this, maybe Aaron Rodgers down at 27, might shock some people here. And again, it's just there's a few factors there that he doesn't benefit from the rushing side of things all that much. The passing first downs, hard to project what it's going to look like in that offense, and it might elevate. And I might have undercooked him slightly, to be perfectly honest. If he cooks quite a significant amount of first downs, he could sit here and jump up to the sort of QB 20 range. So they're kind of the shocks. I don't think anyone else is looking at the rest of these and thinking they're massively wild. But these rookie QBs are punished, and they get punished in these scoring formats. So my big recommendation to you is to stay away from rookie quarterbacks in this format. That's going to do it. Thank you so much for sharing your morning with me. I greatly appreciate you supporting and following along this show. A little longer today. We covered a lot of really insightful content, so I hope people don't mind. They went a little long today, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in the draft streets. And don't forget, as always, Rush Nation, keep rushing.